Hey everyone, welcome to the Null Podcast. We are a talk show style podcast based in Lot 14 in Adelaide, and we are just a storytelling platform where we want to uncover people's masks that they put on in daily life. Come listen to us as we delve down into the stories of everyday people and talk about the accomplishments that they've had in their life. Let me introduce you to today's guest.
I'm Seshni Taylor. I was born in the Zulu Kingdom of South Africa, KwaZulu-Natal, in Durban, and then moved to the UK when I was 10. I've had a really international upbringing and experience. I'm somebody who loves languages, communicating with others, traveling, connecting, and I've had a really non-linear career path, I would say. And the person that I am today is I'm a mum. I have a 1.5-year-old daughter called Nora. But before that, I have a little, big fluffy white dog called Alfie. We say he's our firstborn, our fur baby, Alfie. And I have a wonderful Dutch partner called Gerard.
You mentioned that you were into traveling quite a bit.
Yeah.
So you were obviously born in South Africa, went to UK.
Yeah.
Could you talk to kind of your journey from there? And obviously we're in Adelaide at the moment. So how did that come about and how did you get to here where we are now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm somebody who's always been curious about travel. So I remember being a small child looking at encyclopedias, loving to learn about geography, different countries and cultures. And so my family and I were really fortunate to move from South Africa in 2001 to the UK. And that was for mum's work. So it's a great opportunity. I'm not sure if you know much about South Africa, but it's a beautiful country, but it's very unequal and unsafe with crime. So for our family to move to South Africa was a great opportunity to be safe and to have all kinds of opportunities in life that I wouldn't have had in South Africa. So I moved to the UK when I was 10 years old, a really great age to get integrated into British culture and society. Then I ended up studying French and Chinese at university. So that led me to work in Paris for 6 months. And then after that, I studied in China and traveled there. And then, I don't know, I've just loved traveling. So I've gone as many places as possible. Maybe we'll cover it later, but I can just touch on that I've been lucky enough to live in South Africa, the UK, France, China, Bolivia, and now Australia.
Wow, that's amazing. And what did you study in university?
I studied an undergrad in French and Chinese and then a master's in international relations.
So your bachelor's degree was just the languages?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then international relations. Okay. And then, and so you were able to move to France. And what did you do in France, in Paris?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. At university, we had a year abroad. So our mission was to go out and become as fluent as possible in the languages we were studying.
Yeah.
So it was like, off you go. You have 6 months to go and get fluent in French. So I already had a basis because I started learning French when I was 11. And then by that time, I was about 19. I chose to work in a job, do an internship. So I could have studied, been an au pair, or worked. And I chose to work because I really wanted to get that experience. I ended up working in a construction company called Sheffield Insulation Group, which I had nothing to do with. I had no idea. But I remember seeing the advert in the languages department at university. And I thought, why not? Yeah. So I had a conversation. It was very competitive. They were paying €1,000 a month, which was a lot back then. And so I got that and ended up working in the office in France.
What did you do in a construction company?
It was crazy. I was the marketing assistant. Oh, right. So it was like a researcher, marketing person. I had nothing to do with marketing either.
Yeah.
But they got me to, one of the funny jobs was I had to coordinate the container loads of construction products coming from China to France. So I had to liaise with the offices in China to coordinate what was coming through and then call the logistics companies across Europe to find a good deal to accept containers coming into Europe and then communicate that to our offices in France about which loads were coming and when.
Yeah, wow. So it's the perfect use of your both languages that you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting a feeling already, but there's a saying that everything is figure outable.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you heard that before, and do you resonate with that at all?
Not recently. No.
But like the way that you were saying, like, you didn't have any knowledge of marketing, but you kind of just go there and you do it, and life is not like everything is figure outable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it also helps being really young and naive. I wasn't afraid.
Yeah.
I just packed my suitcase up and took the Eurostar from London to Paris on my own. Went into Paris, just found accommodation, had my job, worked out everything. Now I'd be like, oh my God, how do you do that?
Yeah.
But at 19, it was like, yeah, sure, just go for it.
That's an amazing life you had at such an early age, that opportunity, because I guess, like you say, everyone's a bit more scared now, or like at an older age, but I feel like even like in 2024, people that are younger and younger are taking less and less risks. So, that was great that you had the opportunity to do that. So I'm guessing, and you said you worked in China as well.
Yes.
So I'm guessing that led from that construction company. Was that some of the networks that you had there? Oh, no.
Not even. So I finished up the internship in France after 6 months. That was a really intensive time of my life. And then I went over to China to study. So it was a semester abroad, and that I did 6 months, and then I loved it so much that I stayed for another 2 months to travel and do a bit of summer school work with some schools. So yeah, that was a bit different.
And so how long did you stay in China?
The first time was 8 months.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. And then you went back as well?
Well, then I had to go back to the UK to finish my final year of university.
Yeah.
And then after that, I applied for a master's degree at the same university in China. So that was international relations at Nottingham Ningbo University.
Yeah.
And that was 10 months straight.
Yeah.
And then I went back to the UK for work, and then I went back to China for work.
Oh, wow, right.
It's a bit of a yo-yo.
A little bit of back and forth. Why I want to go back to China soon, but before that, why did you choose to study languages?
Yeah.
Was that a traditional path that a lot of people were choosing at the time, or?
Not at all.
Yeah.
No.
What made you do that?
I've always been somebody who believes in studying what I genuinely love and enjoy. And for me, growing up, even from, being born in South Africa, I naturally absorbed Zulu, Afrikaans, and English. Mm-hmm. So South Africans tend to be trilingual anyway, to be able to get on with life in South Africa. And my parents noticed that I had a natural aptitude for it. It wasn't work. And, my mum came home from work one day when I was 3, and apparently I was speaking really fluent Zulu.
Wow.
So, with our maid, of course, who was practicing and speaking Zulu with me.
Yeah.
But my parents thought, gosh, this is interesting. And so when I got to the UK when I was 10, started learning French when I was 11, and then that expanded to German when I was 15. I just got offered the chance. And then at 18, when I was choosing my A-levels to and degree courses to study, I noticed that a lot of language students were studying English and French, or French and German, or French and Spanish. And I thought, that's just too common. What about something unusual? And I saw this course at Nottingham University for French and Chinese. And I thought, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
And
so French and Chinese, so you kind of did that together.
Yes.
So it wasn't like you individually picked them, but
no,
is that how the degrees work? You kind of have to do both?
Well, you don't have to, but you could have studied French individually, but it was a joint honours degree.
Yeah.
So I chose to do them together. And that was in 2009. And I thought, at the time, China's economy was really scaling and growing at such a fast pace. Mm-hmm. I was curious and thought perhaps they will need some Western people who can speak Mandarin.
I think that's really smart. I mean, even in my own childhood, I've had the same thoughts where it's like, oh, I've seen so many videos of China's economy is growing so quickly. We don't know in 50 years' time if the whole world is going to have to choose either, hey, do you want to go an English-based route of life, or like a Mandarin-based route of life, because there's so many people on both sides.
Yeah, true.
No, that's really fascinating. And so in studying languages, you obviously learn a lot about communication. And I'm sure a lot of people out there are fascinated by people that know a whole bunch of these languages and multiple languages. It's a little party trick, but it's also so useful in life as well. Do you have any tips on how do you pick up a language quickly, and how do you learn a language quickly?
I think the thing that I've learned from it is that I feel my brain is honestly just wired that way.
Right.
I know that sounds weird, but for me, when I was learning Chinese from scratch at 18, it never felt like work. It was so interesting. I could have a 2-hour Mandarin lesson and time would go so fast. I found it really fun and enjoyable, and writing out all the characters by hand, I would think it's really interesting. So for me, it was never like, oh, this is work, this is boring. It was just, give me more. I just want to keep learning. So I feel like my brain was wired to that. And also, I think like when you're really passionate about something, it just comes naturally. But also that desire to communicate with other people. They say when you're learning languages, it's helpful to connect, like if you're learning a new word for something, like table is 桌子 in Chinese. And like I would think of a pattern to remember that word. I would think of like a story linked to it, or I don't know, 桌子, what I don't even know how I remember that now. But at the time of learning, I would think of something that sounded similar or made me think about table. And then that connection in my brain would just be like, oh, that's table, that's 桌子.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. And just being able to communicate with so many more people must be so good as well. I always hear, I hear from a lot of, I mean, obviously you hear when someone speaks English with an accent, it's probably because they know another language than you, right? And English is a tough language to learn, and especially if you've grown up learning something else. And sometimes you're not even able to portray how intelligent you are, how deep you think to someone that speaks English. It's like, you know, if only you could understand me in my home language. It must be so empowering that you are able to communicate people in their own language, and almost like being that bilingual between Chinese and English and French, you know, like it must, just people being able to talk to you, they must almost feel free that, oh, I'm able to express myself fully.
You know? That's what I've really enjoyed about it. Some of my favorite conversations of living in China were with taxi drivers. Yeah. Because in China, like I never dared to drive there. I would always get a taxi somewhere, and I would get to talk to these really interesting guys, sometimes women, about where they were from. And they'd be in their sort of 50s or 60s, so they would have lived through like perhaps the Great Famine in China. So I had these fascinating stories about what it was like growing up in a village in China during the Great Famine, for example. Yeah. Or things that you would just never find out unless you could connect to them in their own language. Yeah, right. So it was a great enabler.
Yeah, amazing. Obviously, a lot of our audience is from Adelaide. We have some people from the US. We have some people a little bit all around the world. I want to ask us about China, but before I ask that about China, I'll ask about Paris and France. What was the lifestyle like there? How is it living in France, and how is it different from living in Adelaide, per se?
It was crazy. Yeah. So that was 2011, I think it was, 2011, 2012. Back then, so Paris was obviously really exciting. I think a lot of people around the world really would love to go to Paris and see the Eiffel Tower. And, you know, you have this idea of what Paris is. Like before I went, I thought, okay, baguettes and pastries, and French is such a beautiful language. And then when I got there, it was just really brutal. It was like, it didn't feel very safe as a woman. Like a lot of my French friends were saying, like, don't get the metro after, in winter on your own. Like you need to go home earlier. I found French guys really creepy, to be honest. Like there'd be a lot of, I learned quickly that if somebody's asking you for a cigarette light, they're trying to get to know you.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So it's like a conversation breaker. Yeah. I learned that Paris was quite messy compared to the UK. Like in London, everything was so clean and tidy. Yeah. Well, certainly in Zone 1, but in Paris, there'd just be like rubbish everywhere, or like dog poo on the pavements, or people weeing in the streets, weird things like that I wasn't expecting. But
from a place like Paris,
or
France.
You have this idea that it's going to be so glamorous and amazing, but then you get there, you quickly learn that there are certain areas or quartiers that you should not go to, or you've got to watch out with these places or these kinds of situations. But I have to say, it was a great baptism of fire, because French people in Paris do not want to speak English. It's sink or swim. You have to learn very quickly. It was a really, really great experience for learning. Yeah.
A language. It's really like immersion. You have to just
full immersion.
Go in. That's really interesting about Paris. So but obviously you did say a lot of negative things there about Paris.
Sorry.
Surely, I'm sure there was some positive parts of it as well. In fact, I want to ask if there's some part of that culture or the people or the place that you could kind of incorporate into where you are now in Adelaide. What would you take out of it?
Wow. That's a great point. And actually, I kind of want to backtrack to that. Look, there were so many positives to living in Paris.
Yeah.
I loved it so much that actually at the end of it, it was very hard to leave. It's true that it's the city of light. The architecture and the lighting and being there is magical. The croissants and the pain au chocolat are the best I've ever had and ever probably will have. Absolutely amazing. And French is such a beautiful language. I loved being completely immersed in that. Parts that I take here are that, for example, in the Central Market, you can go to Les Deux Coqs, the French pastry shop, food shop. It's the best pain au chocolat that I've had in Australia.
Wow.
That tastes really authentic to how it is in Paris. So that one is a great little find.
That's great. Thank
so
you.
go there.
I didn't know that.
If you want an authentic pain au chocolat, that's where to get it. Oh, and they're also on the Rundle Mall strip outside the shop sometimes during the week.
Oh,
so
right.
and they're French a lot of the time, so you can even practice your French with them.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And so going back to that thing you said about immersion, so you must have gone months or years without ever even speaking English. Or did you always were you communicating with someone else from outside of France? Or
That's so funny you mentioned that. I actually I went a bit crazy. So I worked in a completely French office with people who refused to speak English.
Yeah.
So I had to completely do everything in French, even like ordering your lunch in French, calling somebody, which used to be terrifying, all the emails, everything, that at the end of the day, my brain would be so tired. I'd be driving home from work. That's another story, but my family had to bring my British car to France so that I could travel to and from work safely. And I used to speak English to myself in the car because I used to be like, I miss English so much. I'd be like, and I probably looked like a crazy person talking to myself in English because I missed it.
Right.
Because I was driving home to my French family.
Yeah. Oh,
all
right.
in French.
Yeah. Wow. That's the only moment you had. Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. That must have been tough. The language of French and comparing it to English.
Yeah.
Is there things in French that are easier to communicate than in English?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Such as what?
All the swear words.
Oh, really?
So I don't know why, but even now when I get road rage, it comes out in French.
Really?
Yeah.
It's just more natural.
It's just like, merde, tu fais quoi là? Like, it's just so instinctive.
Yeah, wow.
Like, merde is shit in French.
Oh, right.
And that just hits hard. I don't know.
Do people swear a lot in France?
A lot.
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Wow, that's very interesting. And now I want to go a little bit into the China experience, but I'll ask with the same question, which was like, how is the lifestyle and the culture and the people different from even France, but also from Adelaide and Australia and what you see here?
Completely different.
Again.
Completely.
Yeah.
China was
your brain must have like had to like just like always get used to the environment. Like your body's there and I'm like, my brain's like, what's happening? Why do things keep changing?
It was so funny. You're exactly right. I'd land, and China's the one place that you are so highly aware that you're not in your home country every single day. Every single day you wake up in China, you will see something that is completely crazy, out of the norm, that you would never have seen before. A few examples that spring to mind. I wish I wrote down more of these when I was there. But like one time I come out of my apartment, I go downstairs, and on the street there's a guy cycling with a fish tank on the back. What? Swear to God, a fish tank with fish in it on the back of his bike.
Wow.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't expect to see that today.
Yeah.
Or like I'm going in the underground in China and somebody in front of me has a plastic bag with 2 chicken feet sticking up. Like an actual chicken that's dead, that's upside down and the feet are up. And I was like, okay. Wow. There's a chicken in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, it's okay. It's normal.
Okay. It's China. Yeah.
Yeah. And how are the people there? Like,
oh, so friendly.
Yeah.
So friendly and helpful. And oh my goodness, every day it was so lovely. Like I would speak to Chinese people and they'd say, wow, your Chinese is so good, or where are you from? And there'd be so many conversations, and they were always so helpful when you spoke Chinese. There's that element to it, but then also there's so many people.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Really?
I used to get really frustrated with all the crowds and the queuing because it was just like, you can't imagine. You're talking Shanghai has the population of the entire population of Australia.
Wow.
In one city.
Yeah.
25 million people in one city. So
that must have been intense.
Yeah, the queues were intense.
Yeah, wow. And obviously France have a lot more foreigners and there's a lot of people that look different from each other.
Yeah.
Was that the similar in China? But I'm assuming not, right? I mean, is there as much multiculturalism in China?
No.
No, there's not. It's just mostly Chinese people.
Oh my gosh. It's really funny. I spent almost 6 years there in total.
Yeah.
Whenever I would see a foreigner, like a blonde person or someone with red hair, I would be like, oh my gosh, look. And it's like, now I get it, because in China, everyone has black hair and dark eyes. And so when they see somebody different, you stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, I got it too. Like, they used to come up to me. They'd be like, oh my gosh, like your hair. And they'd we'd try to stroke my curls, or like my hair straightened today. But, or they'd look at my eyelashes and go, are they real? Are they yours? Or just funny little things like that every day.
Yeah, wow. But you're saying that they were accepting.
Very, very accepting. Yeah. Actually, more than I thought they would be. I think I recommend to everybody, if you have a chance, visit China. It is so different to what the media portray, to the news channels. You have to go there to experience it firsthand. Yeah. I can't wait to go to China. It's something I always thought that I wanted to go and see. Interesting. Did you go see the Great Wall? Yeah, of course. Yeah, climbed there. I went there 3 times. Yeah, really? Yeah. Is it really a great wonder of the world? It is spectacular. The photos don't do it justice? Yes. No. You have to go there. It's incredible. Yeah, amazing. You did mention that your partner was Dutch as well. So I'm assuming that you met him when you were in France or China, in that region of the world. In China. Oh, you met him in China? Yes. Yeah. In Shanghai. Okay, yeah. I see. And then you both live here now? Yes. Yeah. So did you? Right. And so how long were you in China for? The second stint. The third stint. So the first stint was 8 months. The second stint was 10 months, and then the third time was 4 and a bit years. Yeah. Wow. And then you made your way here. Was that the next destination? Straight to Adelaide. Yes. Yeah. So Adelaide's a bit of out of all the places in Australia that you could go after traveling the whole world, why did you choose Adelaide? Well, I've got this incredible story. Yeah. It's a bit crazy. Okay. Moved to Australia in 2020, February 2020. Wow. At the start of COVID. Yeah. Our tickets from Shanghai to Melbourne were not valid because Australia closed the borders to anyone coming from China unless you were an Australian citizen or permanent resident. So we couldn't get in. So we had to go via Europe to get into Australia. Right. So we just made it in. Yeah. 2 weeks later, the borders close. We're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Yeah. Nobody wants to talk about job sponsorship. So we looked around and we realized we could do farm work. Back then we were 29 and 30, so just on the cusp. Yeah. So we applied for a working holiday visa. Yeah. Got that and looked at a map and randomly chose Mildura. Okay. Of all places, because we were in Melbourne and we thought COVID's going to go like wildfire here. Yeah. Let's get the hell out of Melbourne and go anywhere else. Thank God. Yes. Well, we were in China when COVID was starting. Yeah. So we knew it was going to be crazy. Yeah. So we got out of Melbourne, went to Mildura, did farm work for 5 months. Right. Which was totally unexpected, not our plan. Yeah. But in that time in Mildura, this was day 2 of being there. Complete crazy cowboy kind of feel of a town because we were trying to get backpacker work, not knowing how to do it. The farmers were very anxious about backpackers bringing COVID. There was a lot of exploitation going on. You're talking $6 an hour sort of wages, terrible living conditions with backpackers and complete craziness. Day 2 of being in Mildura, we go to this cafe, just a random cafe on the main high street called the Office Wine Bar. And I just said hello to this waitress and she said, oh, I've never seen you here before. Where are you from? What are you doing? And I told her and I said, well, we're in backpacker hell at the moment. We're new to Australia, trying to figure things out. And she said, oh, that doesn't sound very nice. Good luck. The next day we come back because guess what? The hostel that was charging $340 a week didn't have Wi-Fi. Oh, so, so we went back to the cafe to use the Wi-Fi to find better work conditions, better living conditions. And she said, this sounds really awful. I don't know you, but you can come and live with us. Oh, what? Yeah. Completely wild. Yeah. You can come and live with us. Yeah. As long as you don't mind small kids. I've got a 3 and a 4-year-old, but we've got a big house, plenty of space. You can stay in one of the spare rooms or camp in the garden, whatever you like. Just, you should know that Australians are not usually like this. Yeah. You're being exploited and I'm really sorry about it. So just come and stay with us. Wow. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Completely crazy, right? we didn't stay with them because they almost had COVID and there was like a bit of uncertainty, but she hooked us up to all of the community, and we ended up staying in this really beautiful apartment that was a long-term, apartment thing, which was wonderful and cheaper and nicer. And then we got integrated into that family. She said, whatever you need, we'll look out for you because you've only been in Australia a few weeks and it's the middle of COVID and you don't have anyone here.
Yeah.
So my parents want to meet you for Sunday dinner. Why don't you guys come along? And we go to this dinner at their family home, 15 of them.
Wow.
And they just welcome us with open arms. They're like, come and be a part of our family.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and sorry, that's a long way of saying it. They're from Adelaide.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why we're
what
here. So they said, now that we've gotten to know you, we think that you should settle in Adelaide because it's a hidden gem. It's the perfect combination of wineries and beaches and a great place to have a family.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here.
That's amazing. And you've been in so many places in the world. How does Adelaide stack up? Were they right?
They were.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I have to say, I didn't love it at first because I found it very hard here to find accommodation, to find a job.
Yeah.
The visa was a nightmare. But having overcome all of those barriers, it is the best place I've ever lived.
Really?
It is so good here. Maybe it's because of the phase of life that I'm in now too, because I'm not sure I would have loved it as much if I was 21. But now I'm 33. I love it here because it's like it takes us 15 minutes to drive to work and there's hardly any traffic. It's affordable. Compared to Shanghai or London or Amsterdam, it is affordable.
Yeah.
People are lovely. We love the wineries. We love the beaches.
Yeah.
All the amazing free things that you have in Australia, like these parks, and then you'll get like frisbee parks that are free or even a free golf range.
Yeah.
And free tennis courts. It's like all of these things that people take for granted and we think it's amazing.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I think we really do just take it for granted.
Yes.
I mean, when you have nothing else to compare to, you only see the problems.
I can tell you, this is such a great place to live.
Yeah.
It's safe. There's opportunities. There's amazing restaurants. There's pretty much everything that you need right here.
Yeah. Before I go into kind of what you do now, I did want to ask, considering that you've been around the world pretty much and lived everywhere, a big topic wherever you talk, like when you talk to people that have been around a lot of places, the big topic is always healthcare.
Yeah.
Could you speak to like the different healthcare situations in the different places you've been and how Adelaide stacks up or Australia stacks up in general?
That's interesting. Yeah. So I think the healthcare is really good here. Personally, I have the best GP I've ever had here in Adelaide. And that's because I've got a GP who's very caring, empathetic, never rushes me. She often bulk bills me. She's just like, it's covered, it's fine. Such a lovely, caring person. And I think that's pretty hard to find in a GP. I think Australia stacks up pretty well because I've had a baby here. And admittedly, we went private, but I'm pretty sure if we went in the public system, it would have been great too. That level of care and kindness was just beautiful. I think I feel safe here. So if ever, like I've had to go to hospital a few times with my daughter when she just started childcare, we were seen to, we had a private room. The nurses were so kind and helpful. And the crazy thing is it's actually affordable. I know that people complain a lot that Medicare is expensive or you have to pay this amount for a specialist. But in other parts of the world, it is so much worse. In the UK, for example, you can't even get a GP appointment for months sometimes. Months.
Wow.
There's a shortage of doctors.
Yeah.
The doctors who are working very hard are overworked and extremely tired, not paid high enough. That's why you find a lot of British doctors here in Australia because they earn almost double here. So the wages are better. So you can't really get doctor's appointments very easily in the UK. In China, you have to have private health insurance. I was paying $1,000 a month for private healthcare insurance.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, you do not want to go to a public Chinese hospital as a foreigner.
Right.
You won't be able to get service in English. Even if you speak Mandarin, you'll have to wait for a very long time. Health and safety is often below par. So you have to pay a lot for private health insurance. Where else? I was in Bolivia. Bolivia was good. I was there for 3 months and we had private health insurance again, so that was okay. South Africa, you have to go private, so you're paying a fortune because you can't rely on the public system. Where else? I think really
And
Australia's France I had private. France is weird. They didn't, I had tonsillitis and I had to go to a doctor, but the doctor had a surgery at his home.
Oh, really?
So it was like, I looked on Google for a doctor because that's the crazy thing. In France, if you're sick at work, you have to have a doctor's certificate.
Really?
So even though I was young and I was really sick in bed, my boss said, you better have a doctor's certificate. Otherwise, that's like one less day of pay.
Yeah, right.
So I had to drive when I was sick and navigate and find a doctor and get help. And it was like this weird little surgery in somebody's house.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So that was weird.
That's really interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries.
I think we are very lucky here.
Yeah.
And you saying that you had to have private in so many places, but our public healthcare system is, I mean, I feel like it stacks up. That's pretty
It's
good.
really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know I was talking to a friend who lived in New Zealand, and they actually have 24-hour medical clinics
Wow.
like everywhere. So you can just go in the middle of the night anywhere. You don't have to go to like the emergency room. You can actually just go to like a
Interesting.
GP. Yeah, I know.
That's cool.
Which is pretty cool. But I guess the trend I'm seeing as well, which is interesting, is like the more your population density, the harder this becomes, this healthcare issue. And I think that's why we're so lucky here, where it's like Adelaide, so much space, but not a huge population.
Yeah.
And so we can manage it a lot better.
Yeah.
I know it was a bit off topic, but I'm like, I was just curious about that aspect. So you obviously came to Adelaide. Was it hard finding a job with your background and your qualifications?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because like, what do you do, right?
What do you do? Like, so I didn't touch on it, but I actually had my own languages tutoring company in Shanghai.
Oh, really?
In the last stint that I did 4 years, I quickly realized it was a pattern, even from my first time in China, that everyone was looking for a private tutor. And they particularly wanted British private tutors because they want to set their kids up to go to Oxford and Cambridge in the UK. So that's a huge business. And I got into it through simple demand. Stuck a poster in a lift and I got like 10 clients, and I was like, oh my God. So I figured out I didn't need a Chinese boss. I could be my own boss and use my language to communicate. So I did that for 4 years. And then that made me a bit of an anomaly when I got to Australia. People were like, well, you know, what do you do? Like, you're not going to really fit in one particular mold. I did consider having my own company again, but to be honest, I'd burnt myself out. Like, I worked so long and hard. I had plenty of money, but not enough time, and didn't look after my health. So I had to recalibrate, and I got a job here, interestingly, through a lot of persistence. It was really hard. I applied for a lot and didn't get any response. But I applied for, like, I went back to the drawing board of what do I really enjoy? What do I want to do with my time? And it was a youth entrepreneurship organization called Young Change Agents. And they were all about reaching as many young people in Australia to instill an entrepreneurial mindset from even primary school.
Wow.
So it was like you'd go into high schools and you do design thinking workshops, and you help every young person to see a problem as an opportunity and how to create that into a business. So it was really cool. The funny thing was I applied for a regional manager job with that organization and I got rejected. But instead of taking no for an answer, I contacted the CEO on LinkedIn and I said, thank you so much for looking at my CV and my application. Really appreciate your time and effort. I understand you've chosen to go with somebody else, but is there any way I can get involved and volunteer or do anything to support your mission, because I really love it? And she responded and said, we've actually got this sort of admin-y role that we haven't advertised for yet. Would you like to have a look? So I looked at that and I had to swallow my pride. I had to go, you know what? It's far less than I was hoping to earn. It was really basic and it sounded a bit boring, but it's a way in. So I did that. And then within a month, I actually ended up doing the regional manager job.
Wow.
Because the person who got it left.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So is that what you're doing now?
No.
No. So how long ago was this, by the way? This is because you came in 2020.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how was that experience? How was that role?
It was great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It felt very much like a startup because the whole team was based in Sydney and Melbourne. And Brisbane, and then there was just me in South Australia. So my boss completely, like, she trusted me. She was like, you manage your time. You pretty much build up the South Australia ecosystem for us. So I got to do all of the networking. I mean, I did presentations for the Minister for Education. I got funding. I went into all the schools. I met so many teachers. educators and students. Like it was a really cool job, but it was very full on. And as I became a parent, I realized I couldn't really do both.
That makes sense. I'm just curious as well. How was that organization funded?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of fee for service, so schools would pay to have their workshops, but in addition, it was a lot of government funding, so probably 50-50.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, out of curiosity. So I'm like, which companies are funding
government
that?
funding, or in donations, foundations.
Was it a non-profit?
Not-for-profit.
Yeah, it was a not-for-profit. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And so you obviously have had children and then, well, had a child.
Had a child.
And so you moved out of that role, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And so what do you do now?
I work at Stone & Chalk.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, of course, I know this. I'm actually like, I don't know this. So what's your role there?
Yeah, Startup Success and Community Manager.
Okay.
In short, I'm the super connector.
Okay.
So my job is to help the startups that we have. We have at the moment 55.
Yeah.
South Australian tech startups, and my job is to help them scale and grow.
Yeah, okay.
So that's everything to do with finding funding, talent, experts, customers, and very importantly, building community for them.
I see. Yeah, we've been filming at Lot 14 since we started.
Cool.
And we've said this to the audience a lot. You know, we're at Lot 14, Lot 14.
Yeah.
The thing is, most people don't know what Lot 14 is. Could you explain what is Lot 14?
It's a lot that's called 14. Yeah. No. It's a really cool, it's one of the 7 innovation districts precincts in South Australia. So there's a bunch of them, and this one is the one in the heart of the city. It's all about having technology, innovation, space, defense in one area. So the government has seen the importance of supporting this industry. We want Australia to be a sustainable, tech-driven economy. That's our future. That's the direction we're going in. And so this is a place that that has defense companies, space companies, innovative tech companies. What else? A bit of government, a bit of mining innovation. It's things like that. So it's all these companies coming together in one innovation district.
Yeah, okay. And what was the benefit of that to the economy? Because is it like we're just trying to set up, you know, almost like a foundation, something to build upon, and these are all startups as well, right?
In Stone & Chalk, these are startups.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, some of them in defense are also startups, but the benefit of this is, so as you know, like the way that our economy is going is that everything is tech-based. So we want to ensure that Australia is coming up with their own technology. We want more unicorns like Canva, Atlassian. We want those companies to have a place to thrive and grow. We want people to feel brave enough to step into this entrepreneurial journey and try something out.
Yeah.
There's so much economic return on investing in innovative technology.
Yeah.
For example, since Stone & Chalk has been there for about 4.5 years, our companies have raised over $200 million in capital raise. Yeah.
Jeez, right.
We've created over 700 jobs.
Yeah.
So naturally speaking, from a government perspective, you're going, that's job creation, that's money into the economy, that's putting us on the map as a global place of innovation and interest. We want Adelaide and South Australia to be a global space hub.
Yeah.
That, you know, we're known as the NASA base of Australia, for example.
Okay. Two things there. So firstly, you mentioned for Australia.
Yeah.
So is there other Stone & Chalks? Are there in other places around Australia?
Yes, in Australia. We have a startup hub in Sydney. That was the original. That's where we were founded about 8 years ago. Then we have a scale-up hub. So for our larger companies, sort of talking 20 to 30 people plus. And then we have a startup hub in Melbourne, and then the 4th one here in Adelaide.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And the second thing I wanted to ask was that means you're obviously around a lot of entrepreneurs, including yourself. You're also an entrepreneur. And you've probably seen a lot of successful entrepreneurs and a lot of ones that are still learning.
Yeah.
What can you tell and what have you learned about what makes a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah. That's a great, great question. I think it's the ability to rise up after so many setbacks. It's not for the faint-hearted. It is a wild journey. Some months can be fantastic and you'll have so much income and so many customers. The next day, you can lose half of that or all of it. And it's how you pivot from that moment of being like, oh my God, this is going down. This is not working out well, how do you change your mindset to feel like you're going to rise to that, you're going to pivot, you're going to change it up, and you get that energy to go again. That is a key success determining factor, I would say. Another thing is to be so crazy, curious, and passionate about what you're doing that no matter what, you just want to keep focusing on it. So you cannot, I would say, if your mission is to make money and like you're like, I'll just pick this, that's not going to work. You have to be so invested in what you're trying to fix that you just keep coming back to it, and you're so interested in it. It becomes like your baby, like your child that you're trying to nurture and grow.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And even going back to like your previous role working with schools, like that's where my own like passion for entrepreneurship started. Is we actually had a workshop come to our high school with entrepreneurs, and they started talking about their journey. That's honestly the first moment I can think of that, even that word coming into my vocabulary, that workshop. And what, you know, from someone that's in high school, let's say year 11, year 12, that's heard this before, that I want to make my own business, I want to fix a problem, I want to add value to the world in ways that just a job can't. What can they do at such an early age to give them a head start when they get to that age where they can actually pursue something like that?
I love that question. I think just go for it. Don't let anybody tell you that it's too hard or you'll never make it. Don't listen to that. You've got to try it. And I think it doesn't matter if you're 10 years old or 19 or whatever. Just say you have an idea, get online and find a way to make that work. Test it. A lot of people go wrong by putting so much time and effort and money into building something before they know how they're going to sell it or use it. Like, for example, I started my tutoring company by putting a poster in a lift. It was just, people kept asking me, can you come and tutor my child? I need help with this, blah, blah, blah. Put a poster in the lift that I lived, and within an hour, so many people had scanned that QR code and contacted me. I thought, geez, I'm only one person. I need help here. So then I started employing my friends, and then I would coordinate, and I would take, honestly, 40 to 50% cut of what they, the people would pay me a fee, and I would pay my tutors something that was a good wage, but I would bag most of the profit. So like, you've got to test it, go for it. Don't listen to the naysayers, just do it.
Yeah, right. That's some really good feedback. That's really good. I think you've given us some really good tips on just generally being an entrepreneur there. But going back to the lessons that you've learned from your own life, I mean, you've had such vast experience, in so many different countries, so many different roles. If you could go back to yourself, on that train ride to Paris that first time, how long does it take?
An hour.
I'm just curious. Yeah. If you could go to the start of that hour and just kind of give yourself some feedback or some advice from where you are now, what would you tell yourself, your 19-year-old self?
Yeah, right. That's a good point. Well, I don't know if this speaks to anybody else, but for me at the time, I was in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I would say, don't have a relationship when you're trying to move abroad.
Right.
Like, long distance is not the way.
Yeah.
Like, when you're 19 and you've got the whole world ahead of you, it just gets very, very difficult. It added a whole level of stress for me at the time that I didn't need.
Right.
So I should have been brave enough to go, I've loved this relationship, but I cannot do this right now.
Yeah.
So setting that firm boundary of like, what do I actually want in life? What am I planning to do? And just go, this is not working. Like, and I'm saying that from a place of love.
Yes.
It's not easy, but I wish I'd gone back and said that as a start.
Before you left, did you think that you should end it and you chose not to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. I kind of thought, this is not going really well, but I'll just try my best. And I think that's also the thing of when you're so young, like you don't know any different. So that's one thing, like love relationships, be firm with what you know is right in your heart. The other thing I would say is, I don't think I was very afraid, actually. I was going to say be more courageous, but that's who I am now. I'm more afraid. I think back then I would have just said, just go for it. Like, this is going to be the one of the best times of your life. Like, don't hold back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was your thinking of time at the time? Like, were you in a rush? Did you have a point to prove?
Yeah.
Because I mean, at least speaking from my own experience, like I at an early age, I don't know, I always felt like I have a point to prove. Like I want to not be like this. I want to slow down and I want to like take my time and enjoy the present.
Yeah.
But I catch myself always thinking about the future and like trying to achieve something.
Yeah.
Were you like that at all? Or were you able to like more live in the present and enjoy the moment?
I have to say that back then I was lucky that we didn't have such addictive smartphones. We didn't have it like Instagram and Facebook. Facebook was only just about starting, and I didn't have a smartphone. I had a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that distraction. So I was really present. And if anything, I felt like the 6 months were really long.
Yeah, right.
They felt very long, and it was heading into winter, and it was a challenging time, you know, working in a different country on my own.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a rush, but I did feel the pressure of trying to be as fluent as possible for my degree course.
That's true, yeah.
Because I cared so much about my studies that I was very determined to learn as much French as possible. So I put that pressure on myself.
Yeah, interesting. So it's interesting that you said that you rent to your phones. Do you think that's what's causing this generation to kind of like add pressure to themselves?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I've got to share with you this. It's been 6 days now. I've gone off social media.
Really?
For the first time in my life.
Wow.
I've gone off it.
Why did you do that?
It's too much. It is way too much. I found myself scrolling, just endlessly scrolling, and time would go. And even if I'm so tired from work and having a child, at the end of the day, I would just be scrolling because I felt like it was me time.
Yeah.
And I realized it was so draining. What was I really learning after that?
Yeah.
Half an hour or hour? Nothing. If anything, it was instilling in my mindset a mindset of comparison. Look at what other people are doing. I wish I could do that. I wish I was thinner or, you know, did this or better or whatever. And it was just comparative, time wasting, highly addictive. The thing that got me off it was, you've got to think about those people who've done the programming for these social media platforms. They're geniuses, right? They know exactly how to suck people in. Do you want to compare yourself to that and compete against an algorithm which is crazy?
Yeah.
And 6 days in, I can tell you it's so liberating.
Yeah. Can I tell you, even though this is your personal experience, you are probably the 6th person I've talked to in the last 2 months that have done this. There is definitely a trend.
There's something coming.
Yeah.
Okay, this is exciting.
But it's all like, it's not something coming in the fact that someone's coordinating this. Each one has been their own individual decision. It's just sitting back and reflecting, why is my mental health so bad?
Why are we so anxious?
I had a friend of mine who moved here from Newcastle for work, and I went to catch up with him. And I've only ever met him remotely. And so he works up at the RAF base in Edinburgh. And I'm like, oh, we should go get a beer afterwards. And I'm like, oh, let's go to this hotel. And he goes, oh, it might be a bit tough for me to get there because I don't have a smartphone. I can't just put it on my maps. So he had to like print out the directions.
No way.
Because he had a huge mental health crisis. And he realized that the phones were the problem. And so his phone broke. And he was like, temporarily before he got a new phone, he had this old brick, literally this old Nokia. And he's just like, I'll just use this for like a month until I get another phone. Month was over and he's like, this is not bad. I don't need another phone.
Wow.
I've never been happier.
Good for him.
Yeah. And so like this is just one example, but I'm seeing more and more of people aren't just quitting social media temporarily anymore. They're just like, I'm done.
I'm done.
I
highly recommend it.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I always think the millennial generation was the one that was so hooked because it was new to them, you know? But Gen Z, I'm seeing more and more people are like stepping away because they can see the damage.
Yeah, exactly.
And even with our government, at the government level as well, like with the new laws about banning social media for under 14-year-olds. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I really love that. I encourage that. I think if you think about your brain and how it grows and develops, at 16 or even 18, you're not fully developed. And if you try to give a young person something that's highly addictive like that, it impacts the way that their brain develops. And I have a 1.5-year-old and I will try my best to keep her off screens as much as possible. I will encourage her to be bored, to think of ways to entertain herself rather than just being handed a phone or an iPad.
Absolutely. Have you ever thought about at what age you would give them a smartphone?
It's a good question. I love that nowadays you can get phones that don't have any other things on them apart from phoning and texting. So I'd probably do that for her when she's, I don't know, primary school age, 10, so that we can contact her. Like if she's walking to school, that would be helpful. But I don't want to give her a smartphone for as long as possible. Maybe 14. Who knows?
Yeah. It's just a good, interesting question because it's like, you know, when I was growing up even, you get a phone because that's when the technology came out.
Yeah.
But now you actually have a choice. Like technology's there. Do I want to give it to them? You know?
Because you can function fine without it.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You don't need it.
Exactly. Going back, I think we're almost done here because I think I've had a really good conversation. But going back to obviously all the people that you've interacted with, you said you're a communications expert. Well, you didn't say that. I'm calling it that. Thanks. What have you noticed or observed about people's happiness as you've moved across time from 2001 all the way to now, but also as you moved across the globe? And what would you say about Adelaide and the people that you've met relating to that?
Oh, that's a really nice question. I think the thing I've realized is we, across all the different countries I've been to, we're all really the same in the sense that we all crave, we have a need to be understood and to be heard. Every single one of us wants that. There's nothing better than having a great conversation like this where you feel heard and understood. You want to love people and you want to be loved. And I think it doesn't matter what culture you're in, what color or what you look like, what language you speak, you want those things. And I think the happiest people I've found, I don't know, it's interesting. I remember like my childhood in South Africa being really happy, playing with my friends in the street, playing with bits of chalk or our mum's old tights that we'd tie together and invent a game out of. Yeah. Like that was really happy. It's not about wealth. I think what's unique about Adelaide is it feels there's a mindset of abundance. The Mildura family we met or our neighbors who we love here, there's this never-ending amount of love, kindness and generosity I've experienced in Adelaide, where people are not trying to hoard what they have or keep people out. It's like, sure, you can come over, come to dinner, have this, or I've got, this jacket that I don't need anymore. Would you like it? Or there's so much of these like little things or, even my colleagues, I bought you a donut. I thought you might like one. These small little gestures that go a long way. And I think it's different from other cultures that I've seen where it's more of there's not enough. I better get my own. Yeah. I think here people generally seem very, very happy and helpful.
Yeah. I think that's an acute observation that you've made. And I can definitely relate to that. Both receiving that generosity, but also giving it. Like I assumed everywhere people were like that, but yeah,
not at all.
Interesting to point out, but it is interesting as well in our current economy with things, cost of living crisis, and things are getting more expensive, but the generosity is not stopping. People are. I mean, obviously, there's extents that you have less free money now. But people are still being generous and people... Yeah.
That is interesting. I think it's like the facts of it are that, yes, it is expensive to live in Australia, but the wages are also higher. And I know what you're saying, that yes, at the end of the day, there's probably a bit less saved, but the fact that you've even got savings is a plus. I mean, in the UK, so many people are just living paycheck to paycheck and they can't make ends meet, because the cost of electricity or heating is so expensive. But here, at least there's that wiggle room. I feel that Australia has such a unique ecosystem where you don't have to worry that you're going to, that things are going to go so badly that you one day live in a house, the next day you don't. Maybe that happens, in some circumstances, if there's mental health issues or homelessness involved, then that might happen, but it's not common. Yeah,
that's so true. I think we're almost done, but sorry, you have so much knowledge and I'm like, I just want to pick your brain as much as I can.
Thanks.
But what's something difficult that you've gone through in your life that you have learnt a lesson from that someone listening at home would benefit from knowing?
Gosh.
Because some things you learn by books, some things you learn by listening to people, but there's some things you can only learn through experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot. One of the most difficult things I've gone through is having a child. Yeah. I've always wanted to be a mother, and I feel so fortunate that I'm able to have a baby and that I have such a beautiful, healthy child. Best thing in my life. But that first year of her being around, I went through postnatal depression and postnatal anxiety. And that came out of really extreme sleep deprivation. Before I had a child, I had no idea what sleep deprivation was.
Right.
I'd heard about that term. I'd done all-nighters studying at university or partying at university. Like I'd been through like, oh, I'm tired. But when you have a young baby to take care of who relies on you for everything, like they cannot survive on their own, it's another thing. I went through of not sleeping for more than 3 hours for 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah. She was waking up every 2 hours. And my partner was very helpful and helped as much as he could, but I was breastfeeding and it was on me and it just broke me.
Yeah.
So that was a huge learning curve. The realization of realizing that I wasn't okay, that I needed help, asking for help. Because I'm a fiercely independent person, it was very hard to put my hands up and say, I can't do this alone. I really do need help. Having safe, trusted people to, all these friends would say, oh, just call me if you need anything. But actually not taking them up on the offer, that was hard.
Yeah.
So reaching out for help, getting help. And I think some of the best money you can ever spend, and I really recommend this to everybody, is invest in your mental health.
Yeah.
Pay the fees to see a psychologist or a therapist or counselor. Even if you think you're fine, talk to somebody because that has been instrumental in my recovery. To find somebody safe, a professional to talk to, non-judgmental, non-biased, to get the help that you need.
What's the difference between talking to a therapist or a psychologist versus talking to just a good friend?
It's good. Your good friend loves you and knows you probably in a much bigger picture of yourself. Whereas a therapist, you get to tell them your story. You tell them what you've been through with your own narrative. You can tell your friend that too, but I think the difference is a psychologist has studied and has the full picture of mental health in terms of being able to see patterns of, is this, for example, anxiety? What is anxiety? Does this qualify as anxiety? Is this depression? Are these signs of depression? You know, I think that they are more qualified to recognize things more than a friend might be.
Yes.
Because a friend has a bias of loving you and knowing the whole thing. They might not come at it at such an objective level. So a paid psychologist has that.
Yeah. Maybe it's one of those things where you can't fully appreciate it until you do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Until you do it. And also, I would recommend, and the learning curve is to see somebody when you're not in crisis mode.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there have been lots of times in my life when I've talked to a therapist when things are all like, oh, you know, I'm so anxious or nervous or whatever. And then actually seeing somebody when your life is going well is really great to help you develop the mechanisms to cope when things go bad.
Yeah. That's a really unique piece of advice. I haven't heard that before.
Thanks.
But it does make sense because they're not there only when things are bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you often can't get an appointment if things are really bad. You can't get an appointment for like 3 months.
That is so true. There's a really good anecdote, which was when your house is burning down, you get out of the house as quickly as possible. You don't try to figure out what caused the fire. You do that afterwards.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, when things are really bad is not the time to figure out and optimize and, you know, why is this happening? You just want to get better.
Yeah.
And then you have the time. You know, I had a friend who had a security system company. So they sold security systems for houses.
Cool.
And he said it's one of the toughest markets to break into and the toughest customers to get because nobody wants a security system until someone's broken into their house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
And I feel like it's the same thing here.
I think it is the same.
Until you go through it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant.
Awesome. I think we'll ask our last question.
Sure.
I've been saying this before.
Oh, good.
And it's a question we ask all our guests at the end. And the question is, who's somebody in your life that's been a local role model to you? So it's, currently in the world, we are on the internet, or used to be 6 days ago, but there's a lot of influence from people. There's literally a job called influencer. So people are there to influence you. Algorithms are there to influence you. And in both negative and positive ways. And you can always learn from people. But the reason we're doing this podcast is we want to show the really interesting and fascinating lives of the people just around you that you wouldn't even normally talk to. The confidence that I've gotten just from hosting and hearing the stories of just everyday people allows me in my daily life to just go up to a stranger and talk to them. Because before I had this mindset of everyone's the same, everyone has the same story. But now it's like, wow, people are so unique. Lived experience is so different. So we really want to instill to our audience how important it is, how important just the people around you are and the influence that they have in your life, not the people online. Who's somebody that's in your life that you've learned a lot from?
Wow.
And has been a role model to you?
There's so many. And I love that you're looking up and you're talking to people around you. I think everyone has a story to tell and you can learn something from everybody. Oh my goodness. It's really, really hard to pick. Because, naturally, I always think of my mum when I think of somebody who's had such a huge influence on my life. And we were talking about a woman who moved to the UK when she was 43 with 4 kids on her own.
Wow. Yeah.
Who studied in the evenings after her day job to get another degree to get to the UK.
Right.
That's huge. And she's been a massive force in my life. But I think locally, I've come to realize that success is the quality of your relationships. And so for that reason, I really admire and look up to my Mildura family, Trace and Marv, who are the parents in that family. And to me, they're the most successful people I've ever met because they put family above everything. They have been together since they were teenagers, first loves.
Wow.
And they're still so happily married. It's crazy. I was like, how do you do that? They have 3 kids together and 6 grandchildren or 7 grandchildren with my daughter included. And I would have never met them if it hadn't have been for that interaction with their daughter in the cafe.
Yeah.
And they are so influential because I see the amount of care and love that they give to each other. For example, on Fridays, they would finish work early or sometimes take Fridays off just to be with their grandkids.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know people in their 50s who would do that. And they actually bought a second car and they called it the Fun Bus just for their grandchildren.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So they had their nice car and they were like, no, we need a family car too. And they would go and pick up their grandchildren from daycare or school and they would invest that time in them and do everything I'd always dreamt of families doing, dropping everything and being there for them. Meals together, consistency, check-ins all the time. They value each other so highly that it's really, really amazing, inspirational, beautiful.
That's so amazing to hear. When you said they integrated you into their family, you weren't kidding. They're like, wow.
We love them so much.
Yeah. And so obviously I was going to ask you, you're still in touch with them, but obviously,
all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Do you ever go back to Mildura?
Not as much as we used to because we have Nora who doesn't like car journeys very much.
Yeah, of course.
It's really hard with her, but luckily they've retired now, so they come to Adelaide quite often.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so it's lucky.
Well, Seshni,
I've
had an amazing opportunity to have a chat with you and I've learned so much. Hearing someone who's gone through so many parts of the world is just always amazing, and hearing the stories that you have to say. Thank you for sharing a bit of your wisdom here today.
Thanks, Vision. It's been lovely talking to you.